Hello everyone, Reza here with another Unreal Engine tutorial. In today's demo, we'll be exploring the Animator Kit plugin in Unreal Engine 5.5. This plugin is a fantastic tool designed specifically for animators. It allows you to deform meshes directly in the engine without needing to dive into complex rigging workflows. The Animator Kit is a sequence-driven tool and currently in beta. So it's not quite production ready yet. However, it's packed with potential, and I thought it would be great to share a quick walkthrough to keep you up to date with the latest development. I hope you find it useful. Let's get started. Here I am inside the Unreal Engine. Let's explore the Animator Kit. Obviously, the Animator Kit is a plugin. So first things first, we need to go to Plugin. I'm gonna type in Animator, and the first one that pops up is the Animator Kit. Now, first step is done. We have it. Second one is because these deformers and utilities within the Animator Kit, they're all sequence driven. You need to make sure that you have a level sequencer on your level. I already have the character, I already have the box, and studio equipment. I don't know what's doing here, so I'm going to remove it. Now, where to find the Animator Kit? You select your character, you click on that plus button, you go into Control Rig. Now you have the label for a deformer, or rather filter for a deformer, as you can see, deformer, utilities, and a label for utilities. Now, they're not really showing up. If I turn off those, all it's going to show me is actually the control liquid in the scene, not the Animator Kit, because there is a second step that you need to take in order to activate them, and that is engine content. So show engine content. Once that's done, if you repeat the same steps, you need to make sure that filter asset by skeleton is disabled, and there I have my utilities. As for the deformers, I can take a look at my deformers. At the moment, we have sculpt deformers, 3 types of lattice deformer, and a camera space lattice deformer. Let's start with the utilities because that's the easy one to explain. We get it out of the way and then we focus on the deformer. To attach this to your skeletal mesh on your level sequence, you don't need to drag and drop anything. If you ever click drag and drop, you will create 2 of them. So be kind of careful. You just need to click on it once. And it's now within my skeletal mesh. The reason that it's not auto expanding is because if I go into view option, auto expand node on selection is off, which is how I like it. So it drops itself in the sequencer right underneath the skeletal mesh. And now if I select my skeletal mesh and move it, obviously this CRU3 node comes with it. Now, what is this CRU3 node and what are the components of that node? Let's quickly explore. I'm going to frame on it, pressing F, zooming in. There are basically 3 control curves. Global, which is a parent of the second triangle and the third triangle. Parent, which is the parent of the third triangle, and the third triangle, the pink one, which is called the child. Why they're useful? Because you can connect them to other assets within your rig and have a secondary level of control over your animation. Think of them as extra controls that you can parent constrain, orient constrain, or point constrain to your assets or to your controls, which can be quite handy. So What I have at the moment is the character walking, carrying this box. I can easily go and say, you know what? I want this box to be controlled by this little child triangle. So all I need to do is to make sure the box is selected. I'm going to go into constrain, parent constrain. Obviously, we want the maintain offset to remain on, otherwise it will snap right in the middle of the third control. So with that ticked, maintain offset, we go parent, we get the picker, look at the label. So I'm picking a child, I can pick the parent, I can pick the global, whatever you want to do. At the moment, all three are within your skeletal mesh. It really doesn't matter. Let's pick the child. And if you have a look at the constraint, you can see there's a relationship between the eco rig and SM box. What does that mean? It means that I still can move the box freely, but if I select the child, that also gives me secondary level of control over the asset. So if you want to create secondary animation on top of your current animation, that's fairly easy to do with this utility node. There's another one as well, which is kind of similar, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. This one is called CRU Blend Parent. For now, I'm going to get rid of the CRU3 node, so it's easier to see. I can select this guy, even bring it to the side, so it's easier to explain. It's pretty much doing the same thing. The only difference is you have the global and you have the child, so no mid parent in the middle, but you get two of these. So this is the first parent and this is the second parent, and you have the blend between the two. So if I select the one in the middle, through anim details, you can see the properties and attributes. At the moment it's half-half, gets half of its influence from the parent on the right, half of its influence from the parent on the left. I can play around with that, say only follow the right one or only follow the left one. And whatever you pick, it's going to adjust the influence based on that. Again, how that is going to be useful, you can constrain assets and props to these guys and let those get control by this blend mode or blend weight mode, something that we actually have in the constraints themselves. It's more like a weight attribute. Simple as that. So with that out of the way, let's go to the next chapter and now focus on not utilities, but deformers. It's going to be quite fun. Now let's talk about deformers. We already know where to find utilities. You access deformers through the exact same location. So the only difference is, if I go into control rig, you don't need to be worried about filter asset and you select the deformers filter and it should pop up. With utilities, if you leave that filter asset on, it's not going to show anything, but in the deformers, it really doesn't matter. We have generally three types of deformers. So these lattice deformers with different divisions are pretty much doing the same thing. We've got camera space lattice, which is again lattice, but in relation to your camera. Just the freeform lattice, and CRD sculpt deformer, which is dealing with the volume to deform your object. So let's start with camera space lattice, just simply because it's the first one on the list. I'm going to drop that in. It's going to give us a handle and a grid. And having that anim outliner is extremely useful because instead of trying to pick that handle through the viewport, you can easily navigate, select your camera handle, and then I can press F on it. I always rely on anim outliner to use these deformers. This deformer is called camera space lattice. So it gives us a lattice in a form of a grid that needs to be connected to our camera. It doesn't matter if it's possessable or spawnable actor, we need to have a camera. So let's create a camera really quick. I'm going to click on this icon. You can of course go in there and create a possessable scene camera actor, which drops itself in the outliner. But for me, I'm going to frame my camera, click. It's going to give us a spawnable camera. Hopefully you understand the difference between the two. We have a video on that on the channel, side note. So let's go and zoom in ever so slightly. I feel like my focus settings not correctly set. Let's find the eye picker in the focus settings, click. Now the character is in focus. I can now exit, pilot, and zoom back a little bit to view my camera. Now this handle right here needs to be constrained to our camera. And the reason for that is because we want this grid, this lattice, to be in front of the lens. We move the points, we move the geometry in front of the lens. So with the handle selected, I need to make sure I'm in the animation mode. I'm going into constrain, into parent. Definitely pay a visit to the option box. You can see maintain offset is on. It means that if you parented, there is no snapping is going to happen. So the handle is going to stay put and maintains the offset between the grid and the camera. That's not what we want. So we want to make sure that the maintain offset is off. So the handle snaps to the camera and the lattice will be in front of our lens. I'm going to go create through the color picker. I'm going to pick Scene Camera Actor. And as you can see, now I have the lattice right in front of the lens. The cool thing about that, if I start piloting, you can see I have all the points ready to go. And if I collapse my Scene camera to be able to see the camera handle, these are all the points that are available to me. You can move them, keyframe them, whatever you want to do with them. That's going to deform the character. More of a cosmetic work on the character. If you would like to change the silhouette of the character in certain frames, you can move the points and do that. You can select one point. As you can see, one point is now selected. I can go into my very first frame and set a key and then move forward into, let's say, frame 15, move that particular point, and it's going to set a key for me because auto key is on. And now I have a deformation which is camera facing on this particular area. Now, this is where you want to move one point. Obviously, you can select multiple points. Let's say I want to change this shape, right? So I can go up, and you can always set a key for all the points if you want. So I can select this one and just set a key. It's going to set a key on all these points without you looking for them. You can kind of move that here. I can go and change the silhouette on this side a little bit more. These are good for subtle changes. Obviously, if you get too excited, you get really funky results. Now I can just reposition it, perhaps reposition it back in ever so slightly and get a slightly different look. And now, as you can see, we've got squashing and stretching happening. Now, I understand that working with these points can be a little bit cumbersome. Thankfully, through the Anim Outliner, if you select your camera lattice and go to Anim Details, you have soft selection that can be enabled. So enable soft selection, I'm going to turn it on. You've got the radius, which you can tweak however you want. And you can make sure that every time you do soft selection, it auto keys that soft selection. So that makes it a lot easier to kind of change the volume however you want. So I can move it a little bit closer, select this portion, and from this point onward with the soft selection enabled, it's going to move the geometry, and a little bit of surrounding points as well, which can be useful. It will help you to get a slightly smoother result. All right, that is a very quick look on how to use camera space lattice. Let's switch gears and talk about other deformers. Next deformer is lattice deformer. So very similar to camera space lattice, but we get a freeform lattice is not connected to your camera. We've got 2x2, 3x3, and 4x4. I personally work with lower resolution, so I'm going to bring in 2x2. It gives me a 2x2 lattice with points to deform and a handle. So I'm going to select that handle. You can reposition and rescale your lattice like so, moving it up, perhaps here. You can see I've got a number of points to deal with. You can select all the points and press S on them. So they all have a keyframe. That's my baseline. And I can move a few frames. Let's say I'm going to select these guys and moving it down ever so slightly. And then I'm going to go a few more frames and moving them up ever so slightly. You got the gist, and you keep going like that. So you can see how these lattice points are going to reshape that character. So again, just like camera space, there has to be a very specific scenario in mind for you guys to implement these type of deformers. But the fact that you don't need to ask the rigger to add a control for these type of squash and stretch is going to give you an upper hand. 2x2, 3x3, 4x4, they work exactly the same. Let's have a look at the last one. So I'm going to select the lattice 2x2x2, press delete on it. I'm going to select my character and bring in sculpt deformer. Again, just like any other deformers, it's got a handle and it's got the sculpt deformer in the anim outliner. In the lattice and the space camera lattice, we use that deformer to reposition and rescale our deformer. In the sculpt deformer, this handle is actually going to deform your character. So to move that deformer, you need to select this sculpt deformer. I'm going to move it up ever so slightly, pressing R, so we can reshape, something like that. And then you select the handle, which allows you to move up and down and side to side to simulate squash and stretch. So if I start moving the handle, you can see it's going to squash and stretch based on the volume that you have, which is pretty cool. And again, you can keyframe it as well. So if I move this up, and I'm going to pilot out of my camera so I can easily move in, pressing F on this guy, and I can scale it ever so slightly, like this big. Now you can see this handle. This handle is going to sculpt the character in a sort of a volume shape. So that's the only difference. It's like a brushed based tool for localized artistic deformation. If you want to fine tune specific area of the mesh with a non-destructive squash and stretch, that is definitely your tool. You can see the level of squash and stretch that you're getting in the character, which is kind of funny. So I can go in there, select this handle. I'm going to keyframe it, moving forward. In here I can do a little bit of squash and then move up, a little bit of stretch, and then going down, a little bit of squash and moving up, a little bit of stretch. These type of sort of artistic control that you have available to be able to create a rather stylized animation and sort of play around and have fun with your character. Now, these deformers, in my opinion, are still work in progress and a little bit buggy. I even had moments where I tried to do parent constraint in my camera space lattice and it wasn't connecting, it wasn't doing the constraint properly. So just to stay with the current developments, I think it would be nice to at least know what they do, so when Epic team adds to these tools and we get a little bit of maturity to these tools, we can actually benefit from them and have some sort of a baseline knowledge on how they work. Now, to summarize this tutorial, there it is. I've got all three main deformers. I didn't include utilities because they're very straightforward: primary use and key strength. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you found this video useful. Thank you for your ongoing support. Until the next one, see you guys later.